Although Mario games are generally on the easier side, catering to people of all ages, there can be difficult elements from time to time that will at least give players a bit of a challenge. I've already gone through some of the hardest levels and the toughest enemies, but there's one more topic that I've yet to go over, which is the hardest boss fight in every Mario game. In this video, I'll go over a couple from each title in the Super Mario series. It might include some from his RPG, or paper adventures if they're ones that are worth showcasing. Oh yeah, and by the way, before I get started, my name is Copycat, and if you haven't yet, then please subscribe to my channel, and hit that bell button to stay notified when I upload new videos. The boss battles against Bowser and his decoys in the original Super Mario Bros. For the NES are all very similar, where you have to dodge his attacks, or defeat him using fireballs, and touch the axe to end each fight. There are certain levels in this game, like World 2-4, 3-4, and 5-4, that have a few added obstacles, meaning it's much harder to get to the axe unharmed. In the Lost Levels, or what's actually the Japanese version of Super Mario Bros. 2, everything plays out the same in each Bowser fight like the original game, but the World 8 Bowser has an added obstacle of a fire bar, meaning you'll have to be much more careful. I feel like I have to go over once again that the Western version of Super Mario Bros. 2 is actually a reskin of a Famicom title called Yumi Kojo Doki Doki Panic, which is why the bosses are very unique in this specific game. The one I found the hardest by far is the Fry Guy, who flies around the screen spitting fire at you, taking 3 hits with a mushroom block to transition to the second part of the fight. Here, the Fry Guy splits into 4 separate flames that each take 1 hit to defeat, until they're all gone, ending the fight. The final game in the original trilogy, Super Mario Bros. 3, is the first to introduce the Koopalings, who are the boss of each world and all take 3 hits to defeat. Most of these fights are relatively easy, but there is one that gives me a bit of trouble, and World 6's boss, Lemmy. What makes things difficult is that he's riding on top of a rubber ball, using his wand to summon additional balls that can damage you. The only other difficult boss in this game is, of course, Bowser, who spits fire at you, then tries to ground pound where you're standing, which is hard to dodge without a power-up. Once Bowser ground pounds all the bricks away, he will fall to his death, and you'll have completed the game. Super Mario Land, the first handheld game in the series which was released on the Game Boy, has 2 somewhat difficult boss battles that both take place while Mario is in some sort of vehicle. The first is the Dragon Zamzu boss that's found at the very end of World 2, which is a giant fire-breathing seahorse that's being protected by the moving water bubble called a Tamao. The final boss battle of the game is also very difficult against the Bio Kinton, which is a moving cloud that throws chickens at you, and the Tatanga, which is an enemy that drives a warship and shoots cannonballs. Dodging the enemy attacks is where things get tricky here, especially as the Tatanga's cannonballs split into 3 and are fired at a very fast rate. Super Mario World, released on the SNES in 1991, brings back the Koopalings once again, along with Bowser and his iconic clown car. The Koopaling I always had the most trouble with in this game is Roy, who is the boss of the Forest of Illusions, attacking you in a weird way by walking up the walls then slamming back down on the ground trying to damage and stun you. On top of all that, the walls start to close in, so you really have to be careful not to take damage. Of course, the final fight against Bowser is also pretty hard, as he has his clown car to protect him, sending Mecha Koopas, fireballs, and big steelies to try to deal damage to you. The Mecha Koopas can be flung back at him, which is the only way for you to deal damage, and after 3 phases, defeat this boss. In Super Mario Land 2, the handheld sequel also released on the Game Boy, there's one hard boss battle in the final one of the game against Wario. This fight's broken up into 3 parts, with the first consisting of Wario charging towards you and stomping the ground, which can cause the light on the ceiling to fall on your head. After bonking off Wario 3 times, the second phase begins where he powers up with a carrot, transforming into bunny form, fluttering across the screen before he once again stomps the floor, causing even more lights to fall. The final part of the fight has Wario powering up with a fire flower, where he leaps across the screen towards you, shooting fireballs when he lands. I love how different fighting this boss feels, especially as it's the first and only time you face Wario as an enemy in the franchise. Super Mario World 2, Yoshi's Island, was the first game on Nintendo to really feature Yoshi as the main character, which had one tough boss in the final, Baby Bowser. This fight has two phases, where the first has you facing him in his normal form, where you need to dodge his ground pounds that send shockwaves through the floor, countering with your own until he's defeated. Phase 2 kicks off with the Kamek stepping in, transforming Baby Bowser into Big Baby Bowser, where he can now launch fireballs and send rocks hurling towards you. The only way to defeat this intimidating foe is by obtaining the giant eggs that fly in from time to time, using them to shoot Bowser way in the background. What makes this fight even harder is that Bowser can move forward, making his attacks almost impossible to dodge. Super Mario RPG, The Legend of the Seven Stars, the first of its kind created by Square for the SNES, has one extremely difficult boss battle against the cross-dimensional being, Culex. This is actually a hidden, optional fight, where the Culex has an enormous amount of HP, along with his crystals that don't only shield him from being attacked, but also have their own abilities. This boss also has a very powerful standard attack called Meteor Blast, which is guaranteed to hit you for a massive amount of damage. Square at the time even admitted that they made this boss overly difficult on purpose. However, there are some items you can use to aid you in your fight, but the real challenge is to defeat it without any help. In Super Mario 64 for the N64, it's no surprise that the final boss fight against Bowser is considered to be the hardest in the game. What sets this particular fight apart from the others is that it takes 3 throws into the mines to fully defeat Bowser, and the added fact that he has more ways to deal damage to you, like breathing fire, and destroying part of the platform so you can fall to your death. If I did have to mention a non-Bowser boss battle that I had trouble with in this game, then I'd have to go with the Chill Bully, which can be found in the Snowman's Land's second mission. This fight is tough, as you have to try and knock him off a slippery, icy platform into the freezing waters below. I've lost many lives facing this bully, but it's nowhere near the hardest you'll see in this video. The second Mario sort of RPG we're going to look at in this video, and first in its own unique series, is Paper Mario, which was released on the N64 in 2001. This title doesn't have any major standout bosses, but many people complain that the Huff and Puff, which can be found in Chapter 6 of the game, gave them trouble. This is because he spawns Tough Puffs, if he's struck of any type of attack at all, where at the end of each turn he can inhale them to restore HP, or use them in tandem with one of his special abilities that deal even more damage. There are a few abilities you can use to make this fight easier, like Starstorm or Lackluster Spiny Surge, which can easily clear the Tough Puffs from the battle, leaving the Huff and Puff open for more of an attack. In Super Mario Sunshine, released for the GameCube in 2002, almost everyone online says that the fight against the Phantom Manta is the hardest in this game, but I have to disagree, as I only ever felt like it was annoying clearing the level of the poison rays, rather than it being difficult. Instead, I would have to go with the Mecha Bowser fight in Pinna Park, as I always had trouble firing the water rockets at the giant mech while riding on the roller coaster. On top of that, you need to spray back the bullet bills he shoots, and the fire breath he spits out at you, or you'll take damage. There's no doubting that the hardest boss in the main storyline of Paper Mario, the Thousand Year Door, is the Shadow Queen, who has many abilities that cast status effects on Mario, and a few charged ones that can hit you for massive amounts of damage. You'll definitely have to use Vivian's Veil ability, which will allow you to dodge those devastating strikes, so you won't immediately die and you'll have a bit of a chance. There is, however, an optional boss in this game that's actually tougher than the Shadow Queen, which is found at the bottom of the pit of 100 trials named Bonetail. This enemy has more HP, a higher attack, and a higher defense than the Shadow Queen, while also having status effect abilities, and once again, a devastating charge attack. Of course, with Vivian, things do get a lot easier, but trying to beat this boss without that partner is really tough. New Super Mario Bros. DS, released for the Nintendo DS in 2006, included tougher and different bosses than what had been seen in other side-scrolling platformers in the series, including World 7's Lack of Thunder, which I always found the toughest. This cloud-riding boss throws spinies down below to try to damage you, while shooting lightning beneath him from time to time. To defeat him, you just need to wait till he swoops down, bonking off his head 3 times. I honestly do remember this game being a bit harder when I was younger, and replaying it years later, I was able to beat most bosses and levels first try. Super Mario Galaxy, the next game in the franchise that was released for the Nintendo Wii, had a few tougher boss battles than what usually appeared in Mario games, but in the end, the one I really had the most trouble with was the Bouldergeist from the Ghostly Galaxy. In this fight, you have to dodge the rock-based attacks this boss tries to damage you with, while gathering the bombos he will drop from time to time to damage him. What makes this fight even harder is when the Daredevil Comet is in orbit, meaning you have to complete this battle with only one single hit point. Beating the Bouldergeist in these conditions is no easy task and will take a bit of practice. New Super Mario Bros. Wii, which was released on the Nintendo Wii in 2009, has a combination of two final bosses in Bowser Jr. and Bowser that are the hardest in this game. Here, Bowser Jr. appears in 3 different levels, but it's the World 8 airship where he's definitely the hardest to face. In this fight, you need to dodge his fireballs and initial bomb attack, sending those bombs back upwards if you ground pound the floor. The World 8 final Bowser boss fight looks very simple at first, where all you have to do is press the switch button behind the King Koopa, which seems to end the battle. Obviously, this isn't the end, as Kamek swoops in once again, ruining your day, summoning Bowser in his giant form where you now have to platform through a lava-filled level, dodging his attacks but placing yourself perfectly so some of them break down parts of the wall. Once you finally hit the real switch at the end, Bowser will be defeated and you'll save the princess. In Super Mario Galaxy 2, the second in the mini-series on the Nintendo Wii, there's one tough boss battle in the Gobblegut's fiery form from the Battle Belt Galaxy. What makes this fiery version so much harder than the original is that if you touch it at all or come in contact with the lava pools it creates, you will take damage, so you'll have to be very careful. When only 3 of this boss's bellyache bulges remain, fireballs will begin to rain down and pools of lava will form where they land, making things even tougher. In all honesty, Super Mario 3D Land for the Nintendo 3DS doesn't have any overly difficult boss battles, and the only one I felt slightly annoyed with was the Boom Boom and Pom Pom team-up in World 7's airship. These 2 bosses working in tandem is why this battle even makes this video, but with any power-up at all, it makes things a lot easier. If you've been following my channel since the beginning, then you'll all know that I loathe New Super Mario Bros. 2, as I always felt like the game never added anything new to the franchise, and is incredibly easy to the point where it isn't even fun. The only boss battle that's worth mentioning is the one against Dry Bowser, which can be found in the Star World Castle. The level itself can give you some trouble, as it begins with the Koopalings trying to turn Mario into stone by flashing the clown car eyes at you. To make sure you don't lose a life, you need to remain behind a piece of cover, which is definitely hard as there are tough platforming sections and a snake block that you have to use to traverse across the lava. Once you finally reach Dry Bowser and trigger the switch, you think the battle's over, but once again, you'd be wrong. The Koopalings reappear, revitalizing Dry Bone Bowser, but this time in his giant form. Here, you have to platform upwards, dodging his swipe attacks and fire breath until you trigger the real switch, finally beating this boss. The final new Super Mario Bros. Game, this time released on the Wii U, has one somewhat difficult boss battle in the Kamek, which can be found in World 7's Side Lift Tower. Kamek shoots waves of magic blast towards you that you can easily dodge, but will change the ground under your feet from solid blocks to donut blocks, which will start to fall if you stand on them for too long. The Magic Koopa will also spawn blocks of, well, magic, some of which contain enemies inside, that will stay on the stage for a bit, so that you can use them to platform upwards and try to bonk off him. If you're too slow, he will cause them to fall and break, revealing any enemies that are inside. After jumping off him 3 times, the fight will eventually end, defeating this tough boss. Without a doubt, the hardest boss in Super Mario 3D World is the final of the game, Meowser. You don't actually engage in direct combat with this powered-up Bowser, and instead, you race him up the tower, having to traverse across some very risky platforming sections, all while having to deal with a forced camera scroll. I died several times when I was filming this video, as the perspective can make it hard to dodge some of Meowser's attacks, especially because he can destroy the clouds you're standing on. Once you get to the top, you just have to hit the POW block 4 times to finally defeat this foe. The only boss I found difficult in Super Mario Odyssey, which was released on the Nintendo Switch in 2017, is the one that takes place on Rabbit Ridge against the 4 Broodals and their final Mecha Brutal form. This is mainly because you have 1 life to defeat each stage of this fight, which can be rough as facing the Mecha Brutal is tough enough on its own. I also had a bit of a problem with Topper's hat ability, as I kept taking damage from the swarms of them, which would always set me back for the rest of the battle. Alright, that's gonna be it for today's video, guys. I really hope you did enjoy this one. If you did, please leave a like, comment below if I left any bosses out of this video, and of course, subscribe to my channel. Also, please go follow my Instagram at Copycat Gamer, where I upload some cool clips and items from my collection that you won't see anywhere else. Hope you guys all have a good day, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye!